Let's go, baby. We are recording audio for Meet the Bus episode 1. Welcome in, everybody. This is going to be it. This is our show. I don't even care anymore. I think I've tried to record this specific episode a million times now. It's just a podcast. It's just me talking to myself. I do this every single day. This is nothing new, by the way. And all these wires down here are beautiful, by the way. It's good. I got a whole situation going on beneath the knees, dog. But anyway, listen, I'm finally doing it, fellas. Welcome in. If you're tuning in right now, thank you so much for tuning into episode 1. I am your host, Jeffrey Reckis, and I'm your host for now and hopefully for the foreseeable future, or whatever they say. But yes, we're finally recording episode 1. I'm just sitting here in my room right now recording, and I think I've done this for maybe an hour now. Dude, Graham, my editor, is just going to be laughing at me right now. Like, Jeff, why? Just talk. You talk all the time. Just talk to yourself, you know? And I'm like, I know, Graham, but then, I get scatterbrained. I'm sitting here by myself. I'm like, look at the nature thing on the screen. You see that? I'm thinking about how the Roku TV can't even connect to the internet. Okay, so as I'm saying, let's get back into this. What are you doing right now? What you doing right now? What are you doing listening to me right now? And why am I here? What is this podcast? This is, if you clicked on this podcast, you probably know what it is. But if you're new to me and you're new and you don't know what this is going to be a podcast based around Drum Corps International. And more specifically, not just talking about, recapping shows and reacting to shows and, talking about scores and different groups. And while I'm a big historian nerd, and I love everything about the history of, all my sports that I love. And while I love the history of Drum Corps itself, that's not what this podcast is going to be. So if you're looking for that, I'm so sorry. We will be talking about shows. We'll be talking about, reactions to certain things and certain scores and all that. But we'll be talking about that through the eyes of the member experience. That's right. I want this whole podcast to be based around the member experience. And why do I want it to be that way? Well, because at the end of this season, by the way, which was a great season of Drum Corps International. Groups were on fire this year. Let's talk about Colts, Troop, Gang, 11. I can't do it. I got the mic in my hand. But my boy Nick out there, Nick Emiliak in Kansas City right now, he knows what's up. Throw it up, brother. We'll be talking to him on the podcast. Spoiler alert, very soon. That's my boy right there. But let's get into it. So the member experience, you say, what does that even mean? Well, I think that there's a lot of content within the drum corps and marching band space about, who's the best Blue Devils group of all time, or what's the best show of 20, whatever, and let's watch Vanguard 18 again. There's nothing wrong with all these things. All these things are great. I really appreciate all of them, and I'll talk about later who I most appreciate, and honestly, the reason why I started this up. But this is something different for me, and I want to do this as well because I did the activity for 5 years. I marched from 2016 to 2020. And I miss my friends. I miss all my friends, and I want to talk to them all about this activity. And I think it's really cool because if you look in, the sports industry and you look at these athletes who have all these podcasts that bring, different athletes on, or they bring their friends on. But athletes bring on other athletes to know what it's like to do what they do and to know what it was like during their experience and what teams they played for. And I want it to be the same way because throughout all my years, I've met, hundreds and hundreds of people that all have incredible stories. One being my brother, who will be coming up on the second episode. Nick Emiliak has a great story that I want to talk about. good friend of mine who's my fraternity big, actually. Shut that up, dude. Get out of here, Brady. No way. Um, he wants to know if I'm trying to play him some MLB right now. Maybe later. Um, but yeah, I want to bring on all my friends and have I want to celebrate their stories. I want other people to know about their stories. I want them to know about what they're doing now, because I think so much of this activity, since it ends so early in your life, is how do you pivot from this activity when you're 21 and let's say you do it for multiple years like I did, and it just stops for you and that's it. And it's all kind of like, where do you go from here, especially when you get in this loop over and over again? Because I know, at least for me, when I started at a wee young lad at 14 years old in my first audition, and then you get into this cycle every year of sorry, I'm just listening. You get in this cycle every year of school auditions from November to April, May, and then, spring training from May to the end of June, early July. You tour July, August, championships, back to school, starts up in November again. And then you do this over and over again for years. And I did this throughout high school and to the beginning of college, at least before COVID started and everything. And doing all that, as I was saying, when you do that and then it kind of gets taken away from you, especially in the fashion that it did in 2020 with COVID, you're kind of like, what the hell do I do now? And I think it's so cool because I know so many people who have pivoted into doing so many great, beautiful things. And I also just want to talk to them again and see where they're at. And then also just talk about, all their stories within their experience marching. I'm going to bring on some people, hopefully and eventually, that I marched with as well, just to, reminisce about these stories. But then also for you, the outsider, if you haven't done this activity and you're on the outside, but you really love the activity, this is actually really great because this will be a look inside the curtain from a performer's perspective, not just about a rehearsal clip or what it was like performing a certain show. We'll talk about that too, but I want to hear about your stories. I want to hear about what was your scariest moment in the preseason? What was the first wall like your rookie year? What's your favorite moment on tour? What was your favorite free day of all time? What was the scariest moment of tour? What was you know what I'm saying? I want to know these behind the scenes stories that if you did the activity, we all talk about on the bus, especially if you meet somebody along the way that's a super vet and has done it for a really long time, you're just going to ask about the knowledge that they have and then the stories as well. You want to know about all this stuff. I remember I marched with a really cool guy in 2017 named Raymond Herrera, and he had just come off of marching SCV in 2016, and he was with us at Oregon Crusaders in 2017, which, by the way, did I mention? I marched Oregon Crusaders out of Portland, Oregon from 2016 to 2018, and then the Blue Knights from 2019, 2020. I did mention my years, but not where I marched, actually. It's going to be some really good stories about the Oregon Crusaders. I'm really excited about that. I'm excited. Excited to bring some people on to talk about it. Which, by the way, that's if you march that group and you're listening, this isn't I know that with this podcast, because I want it to be something casual where we can talk about drum corps in a very casual way like these athletes do, where it's just talking about stories and just kind of reminiscing and talking about the funny moments and all this other stuff. And I know with that, there's a risk of people coming on wanting to bash other people's names or bash organizations or try to tear people down, because I want this to be an authentic space where you're able to talk freely about your experience within the activity. I think that's the coolest thing of all time, because while I do appreciate flow marching and other outlets that do, marching band content, it's all very buttoned up and it's all very the extent of it that you get to know, which I guess keeps it cool, as the mystery is what was it like performing that show today? We're here with designer of the show and just talk about the show and the rehearsal segment and the this and the that. And you're can I know, I'm, you know what I'm saying? That's all cool. But for me, having, known about the activity for years now, I just want to see something else because we're in 2023 and the content game has risen. You know what I'm saying? And there should just be more, but I get it at the same time because, you kind of, flow marching has to appeal to many demographics, if you will, of all ages. So I get where they're coming from, but for this, since it's my outlet and my podcast, I want it to be chill. You can come on here and say the fuck word, and you can talk about whatever you want to talk about. And I love this activity. And this past year was the first year for me where I felt like I could watch it again as a fan. And after watching, this is where I want to talk about this. After watching what Funliner Productions has done with Flow Marching this past season, great stuff, by the way. If anyone's watching from there right now, y'all are doing great. I love what you guys do. I love the content. I love how casual you're keeping it and watching the shows, because it's so cool from, if you're an outsider's perspective, watching you guys talk about shows from like you did this as a member's perspective, and you watching the show. That's so cool for so many high school kids out there, and kids, even in college, who haven't done it but want to do it. And they watch you guys who have done it, and they're watching how you're reacting to this stuff and your comments on it, and they're like, okay, cool, okay, yeah. And like, people can relate to how, you're reacting to shows, and they want to see how you react because you did it. And I want this to be like the cool outlet of like, I want all the homies to come on here and talk about that season. You know what I'm saying? Like, what was I going to say? It's so hard by yourself, honestly. Like, props to anyone who does a podcast by themselves. That's hella narcissism behavior. Because, like, to be able to sit here and stay on the topic for a minute, it's kind of hard. I'm not going to lie to you. It's kind of hard. But, yeah. I would like to credit Funliner Productions, Bustin' with the Boys, and the Pivot Podcast for inspiring me to do this podcast, because I just kind of looked at it the day after finals this year, after watching all the incredible shows that happened this year. And in later episodes, not now, because I want this to be very short, it's just a pilot, I want to talk about my favorite shows from all the years, including this year, because I really love that some cores are finally getting some love. Colts, Troop, Spirit. Bro, get all the boys up there, all the boys and girls. Get them out there, because they deserve it. They work hard. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, let's keep it moving forward here. I don't want this to be too long, because like I said, it's just me. So I think I've talked about who am I. I'm Jeffrey Reckis. I'm 22 years old. I just graduated from MTSU, Middle Tennessee State University, down the road in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. I now reside in Nashville, Tennessee. This podcast, Meet the Bus, episode 1, just me talking to you about what we got going on coming up. This is a member-based podcast centered around the member experience. What is this activity like through the lens of the member? I want to talk to all my homies again. I want to talk to people who have done the activity. I want to talk to staff who has gone from member to staff member. There's all these people that I want to talk to. I just also want this to be a good way for people to reach out to each other again. Because I think something that's so painful, especially when you do it, you realize after your first season, it's so weird because you're on this journey your first year. You're like, I promise I'm going to keep this short, because we're keeping this episode short here. But in your first season, you're so like along for the ride, and you're like, I'm here for the journey, man. I'm just here to have a good time, man. I'm just here to do band. And then you get to the end of the year and you realize like all these people that you have spent every waking minute with for 85 days in a row, close quarters all summer. And like at some points you get sick of them, and at some points you absolutely love them. And then at the end of the season, in about 2 minutes, they go. And you're like, what? And you're just in a parking lot in Indianapolis, and they're like, bye-bye. We're going to the airport now. And for me, I had grandparents who lived in Indiana, and my parents would come see me, and we would go back there after finals. So, like, for me, it's just sitting there in the parking lot. Everyone's leaving, going to the airport. Other people are going here. I'm like, oh, no! I got feedback. Oh, sorry. Apparently I had feedback. It interrupted my moment, man. But, yeah, you kind of just sit there and you're like, oh no, all my friends are gone. What is happening? Because it's just so scary, because you grow so close to these people. And year after year, you meet all these people. and have such close relationships with. And I hope that when I start bringing on these guests, I want to bring on the homies. And then from there, we just branch out into getting all these people and highlighting their stories. And I want this to be some good off-season content, because I don't think there's like some good off-season content besides like, ooh, BOA's back. BOA just happened. What's up? November. And it's like, oh, camp. Okay. New staff. But it's like, let's get some off-season content. Let's talk to the people who have done it. Let's just get one episode a week. I want to try to do one episode a week, by the way. I know I've gone super scattered, but now I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to try to give a little bit of consistency here, and I think it'll be a lot better when I have someone to bounce off of, because while I can talk to myself forever and ever and ever, I get very scatterbrained, as you've probably witnessed a million times just in this episode. But I want this to be once a week. I want to release once a week. I want to do, bringing on somebody, and eventually, which I won't spoil for now, I want to bring on people to come back to be a special guest host, with some other people that I want to bring on, because I think that would be super fun. And, at the end of the day, this is just a podcast. It's just another guy on the internet starting another podcast, because we need another podcast. But I'm just starting another podcast. I'm just a guy. I'm just starting up another podcast because I want to talk to all my friends again. And I want to talk about the activity that raised me as a human being and made me who I am today, sitting in front of this screen, repping the home team on the jersey. So yeah, I think honestly at this point, do I have anything else? Who's next? Well, we start with me. And my journey started in 2016, technically. But if you want to talk about where the journey really starts, the journey starts in 2012. And if you really want to talk about where the journey starts, it starts back in 2009 when I was 8 years old, watching my brother do high school band for the first time. My brother's name is Jeffrey Reckis, and he currently resides in blank. I won't say that. I'm not saying it out loud. I don't know if he's okay with that. So I'm not going to say it until I have him on, and we'll talk about it, and he'll tell me if that's chill. But I'm having him on next because that's my brother, and he's the whole reason why I started doing this in the first place. And if it wasn't for him going out there and doing marching band and learning how to, he was originally a saxophone player turned tuba player so that he could do drum corps. And to watch him do that, and if it wasn't for him doing that and taking the chance and the risk in high school to go out and do the activity, starting with Pioneer for 2 years and then going on to Boston, and me as a kid getting the opportunity to go watch these shows and then also get to watch him rehearse and watch how hard these people work and what these people were like that were doing the activity, made me fall in love with it instantly as a kid. So the story starts with him, honest and true. So we're having him on for episode 2. It's going to be a great show. I can't wait for it. He's the reason why I couldn't record episode 1. This is Saturday, September 2nd when I'm recording this. I don't know when this is going to release, but I think we talked a couple days ago, and we talked for like an hour and a half. And I was originally planning on recording that night. And then after I got off the phone, I'm like, all right, let's do the setup. And I started talking, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm talking about. Like, I can't do this anymore. So, it's totally a joke, by the way. But we'll be having him on episode 2. Very excited to get into all that. By the way, he marched 2012 to 2016. Pio 2012. I think I've already explained this all a million times. Tuba player Jeffrey Reckis coming on the podcast, episode 2. That's what we got coming up next. And then after that, we'll see from there. I plan to give you an update at the end of every episode about who we got coming on in the next week. But this is going to be a heavily interview-based podcast. So if that is something that you're interested in, leave a like, subscribe, and get ready for the next one, because that's what a lot of this is going to be. I know you're like, thank God we don't have to listen to you just sitting here in the chair being like, oh my God, bro. He's scatterbrained. He doesn't even know what he's talking about. By the way, I just came up with the show notes like right before this. And it's way too late to talk about what is drum corps now. That's so funny. I'm reading my show notes over again, and I have, what is this podcast? I think I answered that. What is drum corps? If you don't know and you're sitting here right now, and I don't know how far we're into this, but if you're still listening right now and you haven't at least gone and looked up what drum corps is, if you don't know, I don't know. I can't help you. I'm sorry. No, I'm kidding. Drum corps, marching music's It's professional marching band. It's a professional marching band circuit. 22 world-class groups, 18 open-class groups. They go tour the world for the summer. You got it. We'll talk all about it. Talked about why I'm doing this. Who do I want to listen? Who do I want to listen? If you want some real content and you want to know, like, you want to hear the stories from the people who did it, who marched your favorite shows, because I know everybody who marched, like, everybody's favorite shows. So if you want to hear from a member who marched one of your favorite shows and hear their perspective on that season with that group, with a certain staff, I know the people, and they're all going to be on here. Like everybody, bro. So if you want to know the behind the scenes, inside the curtain look, inside the circle, if you will, then come back. Like, subscribe, share with your friends, and then tune in next week. I'm planning to release either on Monday or Tuesday. That'll be up to when I send this over to my editor, Grant, and he gets it back. I think this upcoming week, it'll be the first week of September. This will probably be coming out on Tuesday, if I'm realistic. If it comes out on Monday, so sick. But it's also Labor Day. So if it comes out Tuesday, I'm pretty chill with that, honestly. And I don't even know what this is going to look like video-wise, so we're setting this up right now. I just set this up. I have a $20 tripod and my iPhone recording, and then I'm just recording audio right in front of me. So we'll just see how this turns out. Episode 1, if you'd enjoyed, which, I know I was all over the place in this podcast, I hope I was able to, explain to you in a good way what this podcast is going to be. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you are interested in the idea, and if you are, like, subscribe, share with your friends, get ready for next week because it's going to be an absolute heater. We're starting the story. Meet the Bus, episode 1. It's a wrap. I'm Jeffrey Reckis signing off. Y'all have a great day. Bam, bitch, let's go!